Hey everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day. Lately, I've been really getting into body language because it's such a huge part of social skills and social communication, whether you're presenting, whether you are communicating, having a job interview, going on a date, or just interacting with a new person, whether that's your boss, your manager. It's all incredibly important to come off as clear, concise, and amazing as possible. And so I stumbled across this video on body language, and there's some things I watched about 2 minutes of it, and there are things I disagreed with, which I have actual evidence from really highly acclaimed books on body language from uh, research and experts that kind of contradict some of the stuff they said. So I said, you know what? I like some of the stuff. I don't like other stuff. I'm going to do a react video, and then I'm going to watch the rest of this video with you guys and just kind of react to it from the start and give you some what's good and what's bad. So let's just get started.
Guys, this is Ian Miles, joined by
Skip
Gabrielle
ahead a
Ryan,
little
and
bit.
today we're going to be talking about the top 5 body language mistakes guys make in dating.
They have
It's very
like
important that you're aware of your
300,000
body language,
subscribers.
as it can be the biggest signal to how you're feeling at any given time. So when it comes to dating, this is a major factor, as over 90% of language is non-verbal, so it's important that you're giving off those right signals.
Let's skip ahead.
Will be formed within the first 3 seconds of a meeting. So it's important that you just get it right. Women are slightly different. So here are our top 5, and please don't avoid them at any cost.
Fidgeting. Stop fidgeting. This gives off the impression of someone being nervous and insecure in themselves. This can make both
That I
parties
agree with.
uneasy when on a date. So biting your nails, rubbing or holding your face, and even constantly playing around on your phone are examples that lead to the result of the person being in an uncomfortable situation, and idle hands usually become busy hands as a result of this. Once you become aware of this, you'll find it easier to stop doing it. And a good way to do this.
So I'm going to pause it right there. I'm sorry for the lag as I'm recording this. Apparently, my software is not fit for recording YouTube videos. That said, so far, I agree with what she said. Fidgeting, of course, is obviously bad for the reason she's mentioned. We're coming up on the part where I am going to start disagreeing a bit.
Is to keep your hands close to your pockets and just your thumb inside your pocket. This will remove the need for.
That's where I disagree with. She is suggesting that to prevent fidgeting, you have to put your hands in your pockets and or at least put your thumbs in your pockets. Now, that's one of the things that, according to FBI secret agent Joe Navarro, who has spent decades as a nonverbal communication master with years of reference experience interrogating spies, criminals, and uncovering all sorts of different discoveries, is that putting your hands in your pockets or your thumbs in your pockets is actually very low confidence body language. It demonstrates a low confidence, sometimes a low status, maybe being unsure of yourself, and that's not always a good thing. And you know the moments where you see someone and you can't put your finger on it, but something about them just seems kind of low confidence. And that's what's happened. And my big gripe with this is that, people are trying with their best intentions online to give advice, but then, they're using their own experiences and opinions, and they even get a lot of traffic from that. And because of that, people get really they can be misled sometimes, and it's not intentional. This channel has 300,000 subscribers, and I'm gonna like the video because I want to. I won't like or dislike it. I'll just kind of leave it neutral. But I think there's good parts and there's bad parts. You just have to kind of keep in mind who you're listening to whenever you're consuming success advice. Now, Joe Navarro, with his books and his info, he's helped basically bust a lot of suspects and uncover a lot of criminal activity just based on certain changes in body language. And that's taken decades for him to hone down, and it's worked very well. On top of that, it's not just this book. There's many other books out there, like Vanessa Van Edwards, who's also a YouTuber, a very successful YouTuber, who talks about networking and body language. And in her book, Captivate, I was just reading this. She makes a huge point about emphasizing how you should never put your hands in your pockets. And that was based off her research lab team, who analyzed hundreds, if not thousands, of TED Talks and tried to kind of correlate the patterns between which TED Talks went most viral and which didn't, and what was the difference. And one of those was hands in the pockets. So let's continue watching this. Again, I apologize for any lag in play.
Fidgeting, and you will appear calmer and more open as a result.
Poor eye contact. Now, this is a very important factor when it comes to communicating non-verbally, as it's a great way for you to show your confidence and your intent. Now, for example, if you're a woman in a bar making eye contact to a guy, it's a great way to show that you like him and to invite him to approach you. And if you're a guy, then this is a good sign that she is interested in you. So the biggest mistake that a lot of guys make is that they break that eye contact and they look down at the floor, which makes them appear very unconfident. Now, it's perfectly okay to eventually break that eye contact, but look away to either side instead. It is also important that you're able to maintain that good eye contact, whether you've just met each other or you're on a date, as again, it can give off the wrong signals. Now, if you're a woman and you don't keep good enough eye contact, you may give the impression that you're just not interested, even though you are, and from that perspective of the guy, you may appear untrustworthy or even unsure of yourself if you just cannot maintain the eye contact.
So I'm just going to pause it right there because they're just going to jump into the next tip. I generally agree with this point. Just a few little tweaks, or not even tweaks, just comments about them. Eye contact is actually even more important when you're actually interacting with the person. So once you're actually there, most people make the mistake of being unable to maintain eye contact when they themselves are talking. It's hard to do so because sometimes that's when your brain power is being diverted away towards what you're saying. So then because of that, you start thinking and your eyes start to wander. So, that's something that I've learned and that I really struggle with. Like, it's hard to do that, but I'm trying to pay more attention to it. And so when you're talking, try and maintain eye contact with the person in front of you for as long as possible. Yes, you can blink, but try not to look away that much. There's been research and studies that show that the leaders compared to employees tend to be able to hold that for longer, and just maybe it's even unconscious, but they're able to do that while talking for a longer period of time. So if you want to be seen more as a leader and kind of like a man who takes the lead, keep that eye contact. And it's just good for engagement, even if you're not a man, even if you don't want to be a leader. In terms of looking away, I think I generally agree. Tucker Max in his book, What Women Want, he talks about that. He in his podcast too. He says numerous times that it's predatory behavior when you look away as soon as someone catches you looking. It makes you seem as if you are hiding or trying to sneak up on them, and that's actually not a good sign. It indicates danger. So, that doesn't mean you flip to the opposite end of the extreme and you just continue staring for indefinite amounts of time. That could be seen as creepy, lacking in social awareness. That's, you're staring for that long without ever talking to her and unaware of it. So you don't want to do that either. So generally, follow what you said, look to the left and right, but maybe hold it a little bit longer than usual. Let's continue.
Crossing arms. When you see a person who is crossing their arms, what do you feel? Ask yourself now. Crossing arms means that I'm not interested in what you're going to say, so please don't talk to me.
I'm going to pause it right there. So she basically said that crossing arms is bad because it is perceived as, hey, don't talk to me. Now, this is actually a huge myth that I only discovered the truth about thanks to reading a few of Joe Navarro's books. According to Joe, who also studied a lot of evolutionary biology and kind of human psychology around the prefrontal cortex and primal reptilian behavior through the limbic system, during his research into body language, crossing of the arms is actually usually it's a self-supplicating, self-soothing maneuver, People do it reactively, actually to soothe themselves because they are themselves in a state of stress, rather than because uh, you know because they're confrontational or they don't like the person around them. I'm actually trying to find the page in the book to read to you about arm crossing. This is like a little glossary guide. It's a short book version of his all the different body language poses you can put, and then they have short little paragraphs summarizing all of them and explaining why people do things and what they indicate. So, once you've read his more thorough books on that give you the science about it and the methodology, this is a good like glossary book uh, to kind of go against. So I found one here: arms crossing slash self hugging. Self hugging is an effective way to comfort ourselves while waiting for someone to arrive. This explains why so many passengers on a plane will cross their arms while standing in line to use the restroom. Here are some of the reasons reported to me why we cross our arms. It's comfortable. It's useful when my arms are tied. It hides my boobs. I do it when I'm inquisitive. It hides my belly. There are a lot of people that mistakenly equate crossing the arms with keeping people further away. That is usually not the case. Now, so this is another one that I have a gripe with. And, it points back to my whole point about, people just giving advice based on their opinions and experience with good intentions, and then the reality of it and the effectiveness in their success in life. And so, I actually, like this YouTube channel. I'm not trying to bash them. A lot of their other videos are pretty awesome and entertaining. And so, but, when I want to help people just like them, and I'm trying to kind of just clear things up so we can help more people. And so, to their point, even if that's not exactly how people actually are crossing their arms, the truth of the matter is that if enough people believe it is, then people will assume it's that way. I remember a few years ago, I was working in food and dining, and my manager came up to me and said, "Don't cross your arms during a meeting." We were doing a stand-up meeting, and he's like, "It makes you look confrontational and that you don't want to be open and part of it." And, arguably, I could see how that could be true, even if it's not really true from a biological and reactive standpoint and from the perspective of a person doing that. If enough people popularize this idea and believe it to be true, and I think a portion of people do that, then you should be aware of that and just not do it just in case. Now, what Joe Navarro does is he's really about screening people. And it's not just for criminals, it's for boardrooms, for meetings, and so forth. So, what that means for you is when you see someone else crossing their arms, don't take it as they said, this video said, and just think, oh, they're not interested. Look for other signs, because the crossing of the arms alone could simply mean that it's just a self-soothing maneuver. However, if you do it too often, it may be just good to do it less because of other people's misconceptions about it. Let's move on.
Crossed arms may also indicate a lack of trust. So believe me, if she sees you crossing your arms, she'll feel disconnected and she might
I'm
even
neutral
feel
about
a
that.
bit of
Maybe
irritation.
not.
You'll block her out and you'll send a negative message. So when you cross your arms, you're actually interrupting the rapport. Therefore, you should avoid this at any cost.
Minimizing your body. Now, don't be afraid of taking space, as this will indicate that you've got high status and will make you much more visible. So if you minimize, you'll be viewed as a much...
I'm going to pause it right there. So he's talking about minimizing space now. And once again, I'm doing a poor job of explaining who Joe Navarro is, because you still might be like, well, why should I trust this one instead of that video? Usually people on YouTube are usually too trustworthy, or they're super skeptical and toxic in the comments. But, look him up on your own, but his bio really goes into detail about how he's really done so much for the world with his expertise in body language. Moving from the head down to the feet, Joe shows the meaning. A lifetime observer, a special agent of the FBI. After retiring, he wrote the groundbreaking bestseller, blah, blah, blah. So he's a really cool guy, and that's why I think you should trust this book over some of the stuff that they say in this video. Now he's going on to minimizing body language. I think This is actually right on point, but it's more so for men than women. So you know how I can tell that this video is trying to give advice to mostly guys, but also to women. However, in terms of minimizing, maximizing body language, generally speaking, he's on point. You know, universally, when you look at athletes who win or lose a game, they will maximize or minimize to hide themselves or demonstrate, show that they're there. Vanessa Van Edwards also talks about this in her book, Captivate. So it's generally true, but you see guys do it much more often, even in casual settings, because I think it's much more of a male dynamic with the status roles and all that stuff that they've been biologically wired to do. Women do it too at the end of a sports game, but it's less of a thing. You know, if you walk into like um, a room and a woman's trying to like lounge out like crazy, um, it's not seen as often. And so you can do that, but we're trying to figure out what's most effective here. And even a guy, you have to taper that back depending on a situation. If it's a large corporate meeting and you're the lowest guy on the totem pole, or totem pole is actually not a good example, because if you're at the bottom of a totem pole, you're actually the highest status. But if you're the bottom, lowest status person in that room and you're just taking up all the space, maybe even going on other tables, that's not only socially unaware, it is almost threatening or antagonistic or domineering territorial behavior that can cause issues. So you have to tone it down to an extent. You can still take up space, but just keep that in mind. Let's continue.
Less powerful male, and it will be very feminine. And if she notices that you're minimizing your body, then she'll think that she's superior to you and you'll look submissive. She will immediately lose that attraction and that respect. Or she'll brand you as that beta male, and it's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's very important, therefore, that you take up your own space, as she'll respect you much more for claiming your own space.
I don't have any.
Now, I'm not saying here that you act like a jerk, spread yourself all around, and you own every single space. Be respectful to others always, but make sure that people around you know that you're claiming your space.
Close body language. Whether you're meeting someone for the first time or a date, this is a big aspect that you should be aware of. When it comes to meeting people in bars, I make my clients more aware of their body language. For mistakes.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Sorry again that it's lagging. I'll try and switch to a different recording software from now on. Now, she's talking about closed body language here, and honestly, I have no gripes with this. I just think this one's a bit more obvious, and one of the things is I think people can kind of get confused with it, because if they see one thing, then they're like, oh, this girl doesn't like me. But sometimes just one clue is not enough. That's why Joe recommends in his methodology that you look for clusters of patterns in behavior. A certain facial expression plus the ways the legs tilt, plus a shaking of a crossing, a turning of the shoulders. Those are 3 signs versus one thing. And that'll be a much more likely thing. He also recommends really getting a baseline behavior for how that person acts, because everyone has a different baseline, and person's behavior may seem closed off until you realize that that's their baseline behavior all the time. So there's a lot more complexity to really gauging someone than just seeing if they're closed off to get a more accurate response.
Men make so that they can appear to have very closed off body language when they're in a bar. This is fine if you're looking to catch up with your friend after a long week and you don't want to be disturbed, but if you're looking to meet someone, you're giving off the wrong signals as you're appearing closed off and you're less likely to be social or approachable. So have your back facing the bar and keep your arms unfolded. Many guys subconsciously hold their drinks close to them as a form of a crutch, especially if they're on their own. This gives off the wrong signals of insecurity in themselves. Instead, you should stand tall and keep your head high and hold your glass at waist length.
Solution, consistent practice and awareness. Now, whether you're actually doing 50% of it right or none at all, practicing good body language is very important, and don't expect to just adopt it right away. But just be aware of what you're doing and how you appear at all times. Now you see, poor body language is usually the result of having those negative thoughts about yourself and the world around you. So it's important to question these thoughts and start thinking much more positively about yourself. Now you can also change how you're feeling by simply changing that body language as well. By just smiling, you'll notice how your state will change. So even if you're thinking negatively, you can still practice that good body language as over time your level of state will improve to reflect that positive body language. So stop fidgeting and smile.
All right, so I'm going to pause it right there. It's starting to lag a bit. So, yeah, overall, I agree with his last couple points. I think ultimately, going beyond the obvious, one thing I would add is just that it's so important to understand that when you're analyzing body language, start with from the feet down. And that's something that was like mind-blowing for me. Joe explains in his books that when you are analyzing body language, people have been trained to be able to hide and mask it from the head down. So the less, the farther away you get from the feet, the less reliable your signals are. So literally, the face can be concealed. We've been trained from birth to conceal our face. We could be angry at you, but we might pretend to smile. And people usually immediately gravitate to the face to detect something. But the most reliable signals from best to least are feet, ankles, knees, legs, then arms, and then neck, and then head, and then mouth, and then eyes. So it's literally from the bottom up. And so the feet is probably the golden goose here. And he explains it much more in detail in his books. But if the feet are pointed away, if they start to jiggle happily, if they start to jiggle nervously, if they point towards you, those are all very clear reactive signs that someone likes you or doesn't like you. And oftentimes they're incredibly more revealing than whether someone smiles or anything like that, because some things can be faked.
More.
As always, leave your comments and any questions you have below and we'll answer them personally.
So that's it for the video. I will go ahead and leave a link in the description to the Amazon results page for Joe Navarro, because I think he has a lot to teach, and it's really revolutionized my ability to understand someone. And it's just a beginning for me. I have still a lot to learn. It's a constant practice, as this video says, and hopefully it will kind of help you get ahead and improve your social intelligence too. Coming from someone who had pretty average intelligence socially, maybe even below average, I think I've come a long way, and I think you can too. So check out his books. There's audiobook versions too that are great as well on Amazon. And I even have a Audible affiliate link below. So basically, if you go through my link, you'll get a free audiobook if you're signing up for the first time at no extra cost to you. Once again, I think Comet TV is pretty awesome in general. I think they made a few mistakes in their recommendations, but I enjoy their content. It's very entertaining. They go off on the street and interview random girls and stuff. I find that really cool to watch and fun to watch. I mean, who doesn't like watching attractive girls? That being said, I apologize. Why should I apologize for that? I mean, I'm just saying, like, here's my thoughts, and respectfully to you, some of the things said were not accurate, respectfully. So don't get mad at me. Don't get offended if you're watching this Comet TV. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next video.